Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the February 18, 2020 Board of Selectmen meeting. I would like to call us to order, and I would ask everyone in the room to rise and so we can recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I would like to move to public comment for items not on the agenda. Steve Becker, you got any questions for us? All right, seeing none and hearing none, we will move to Article V as in our notebooks, IT department upgrades. Steve, would you mind joining us up here at the podium? You provided us with some written material, giving us some background on the necessities for the upgrade and changes to the server room. I was wondering if you could just take us through it briefly and just provide the audience a little context for the warrant article request.
Sure. Our IT server room kind of morphed from a closet years ago.
There's so many functions now.
And it just doesn't have the requirements for electricity, standby power, grounding, weight-bearing requirements, generator backup power. So it's really lacking in all phases, especially space requirements. Right now, we use it as a kind of a multi-purpose area. Not only does it house servers, racks, switches, but it also houses a workbench, cabinets, file cabinets, a desk. So there's pretty limited space to move around in there. To install a server into the rack, you really need about 3 feet on each side of it to safely move around and lift heavy equipment. And right now on the back side of it, there's enough space in the front of the racks right now. On the back side, there's probably about a foot. And if I gained another 2 or 3 pounds, I may not be able to do anything in the back of the server racks. So it's a job description.
So we need to give them a membership to this.
There we go. Membership.
So it just really lacks in all phases of what a data center really should be.
Joe, questions?
Yeah, what's the timing on getting these upgrades done?
As far as from beginning to end, they haven't given us a specified period of time. They're gonna work in like a phased approach so that we can basically modify the room so that they can put new server racks in, and then we'll need to do a phased approach at moving equipment from the old racks into the new racks once they get that up and running.
And you're going to be supervising this work?
Correct.
That's it?
Mary?
Steve, how did you go about locating this particular vendor, and what's the quoting process for getting estimates?
The vendor, I put out a question to other IT people.
Yep.
As far as a vendor for this type of work, and Longden came up. So, I'm sorry, the second part of that question?
Yep. And so
procurement.
what is the, if this is approved by town meeting, what are the procurement steps that would need to happen?
We'll still need to bid out this project because of the price range.
Okay.
But we should be able to complete it before Steve retires next year.
Our intent would be to have that those procurement documents ready to go for a post-town meeting vote, so that, immediately after we can issue.
Yeah. I would just say, I was chatting with Steve before the meeting. IT, I mean, if you think about everything that runs in this town, whether it's people's ability to look at permit information or pay a bill or access information, IT is a critical resource that really does touch every department and so many of our citizens' interactions. And I view this not only as helping manage space, but this is really shoring up that IT infrastructure, which is so critical for the town. This is something that we've talked about doing, and as the demands on the IT department increase, the need to move forward on this increases as well. So in particular, given given upcoming personnel changes. This is absolutely the right thing to do, and I really don't think it can wait any longer.
Yeah, I agree.
I really appreciated the detailed analysis that Longden provided. Looks like the ballpark they're suggesting is in the $250,000 range with some add-ons for floor and structural changes, right? So
Correct.
in a lot of ways, to Mary's point, it's short money for what is critical to the operation of town government. So I appreciate, again, the effort that you put into kind of specking out what you think needs to be done and, providing that level of detail to us to be able to, I think, then discuss with town meeting. So, any further comments?
The only thing I just wanted to add is to make sure everybody understands that the scope of the project includes fitting out the remainder of the IT suite with office space
As office
for the
space.
appropriate personnel and doing,
Yep, good point. Yep. And I'm not asking for questions from the public because the harbor master's here, but that's about it.
it is his old space that we're gonna use.
Okay. Sorry, Ken. Yeah, but you've got great space now.
You've got good space.
Exactly.
You've got a view.
And you're near the water.
That's
So, there you go. Further comments on Article V? If not, I would take a motion.
Move favorable action on Article V.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next is Article X, the townwide facilities study.
Sure. Michelle, do you wanna walk us through it?
Sure. So the intent behind this article is to have an independent study done to look at the town's current facilities, both on the municipal and school side, and analyze how we're using these buildings, what are our service demands, and our space needs, and kind of come up with a plan and some recommendations about how we could better use our existing facilities or possibly, renovate or upgrade what we've got. We talked to the lead architect from HKT Architects, who worked on a similar study for the town of Needham in 2013 to try to get some ballpark pricing. And she was telling me that right now they're seeing that these studies are coming in the $200,000 to $250,000 range, but typically involve fewer buildings than we've kind of put on our list. So a lot of Needham's, for example, involve 17 buildings. We've come up with a list of 31, but all that means is that we'd have to prioritize our buildings and maybe have them work in tiers. We're requesting $300,000 for this study, and the architect felt that that was reasonable. The way these types of things work is that it would be a fee-based project or a not-to-exceed fee. So it's not that we would run out of money with the $300,000, but perhaps we need to be
Have to
flexible in our
prioritize.
scope and prioritize the buildings that we would ask a consultant to look at. So that is the plan. This is sort of the building sister study to the field study that we're doing right now.
Joe?
You've really laid out an extensive list of properties and facilities that are going to be looked at, and this is something that I think is essential for the town's plan. So thank you for doing this.
Mary?
I would just, really the impetus behind doing this project, the audience may be aware that for the last couple of years, the town has been looking at really sort of identifying its long-term capital needs and trying to sort and prioritize. And, one of the questions that we all have is, what sort of uses of existing spaces are adequate? Do we have enough space? Do we need more space? And, for the last 2 years, our office has really, I think, led with a lot of financial work that is really helping us get our arms around the financial side of this. But there's another important side, which is really more the sort of space planning. And, I think that as strong as our volunteer community is, I think that there's great benefit in having an independent view by people who do this for a living. We know that this building in Town Hall has more activity than maybe it can manage. And I think that, there's been discussion over the years about, well, what if we move this activity, or what if we move that activity? Speaking personally, it's hard for me to, in some ways, move ahead on a plan without knowing, is it the best option? Is it feasible? Have we considered everything? And this is where I think some professional expertise would really help us. I think another aspect that will be helpful to us is that the scope of this project includes some buildings that the town owns, where over time, we've talked about, you know, might we want to sell this building? Might we want to enter into a long-term lease? And again, I think we've been reluctant to do that because we're thinking, well, we could maybe use that building. So I really see this as informing our long-term financial planning. I know that, that there is a real interest and a desire for us to sort that out. And in my mind, Article X is a really important step. I'm also glad that the board is initiating this after the completion of some of the great master planning work that's going on this year, because I think that some of the results of that are going to inform future space needs. I would make one last point. I don't see this as, you know, people going in and inventorying how old every boiler is in town and putting together a schedule of when we need to replace boilers and stuff like that. This, to me, is a higher level than that, which, as Michelle said, it's kind of the building version of the town field study, which to me is a sensible place to start. So I appreciate this being brought forward this year.
I concur with the sort of level of review. You know, I think that we have, Tom found this, you know, older notebook that Betty Foley helped us put together back in the day. So we have made some efforts with our volunteer and staff base around gathering this information. But, you know, I think that the level of sophistication that a consultant will bring is sort of right timed for us in terms of financial planning and, as Mary suggests, space planning. You know, we have, I think you've heard us talk about, we've, you know, essentially outgrown the one campus approach. And so the question is, where and how do we locate services in the correct locations around town, and how do we best utilize the assets that we have, and how do we have that conversation unless we fully understand exactly what's out there. I think it's really, really important to understand that our school colleagues are on board with this. We'll work with the Recreation Commission. You know, there are, your town government is actually fairly decentralized when it comes to authority for certain aspects of town assets. And so, just like the field study, if the stakeholders, you know, don't join together, I think you get an incomplete and disjointed project, and that's not the intent. With this study, I would also say that I think this warrant article is responsive to the members of the advisory committee that have expressed the concerns that Mary outlined. You know, in particular, Libby Claypool, Bob Curley, and Victor Baltera have, I think, been encouraging to us to produce a product that I think tallies the assets of the town in a way that will inform again, both space needs and financial planning. So right. I think this will be an exciting effort to undertake.
I just add one more thing. I am really hoping too that this study, that the objectivity of the experts is going to inform priorities. Right. And I think that, you know, I sort of feel like sometimes I'm hearing two things. I'm hearing people say, well, Board of Selectmen, you know, you need to prioritize, and then, you know, like last year, you know, we made some votes on some projects, and then people said, well, I don't like you prioritizing. and I guess what I would say is, as I look at it, I think we could easily come up with a list of capital projects that probably are bigger and broader in scope than we would have the appetite or ability to do in the next 5 years. So to me, I'm looking at this as forming the basis for what are we going to do over the next 10 to 20 years, and how do we space these out? And, you know, an assessment of the facilities and the space and the options, I think, will give us a line of sight to priorities. I think we've all said individually that Foster School is our kind of top priority, and the MSBA has said it's a state priority. I think this is going to help inform what's next.
And, but I do think it's really, really important that this become a tool for the policymakers to develop priorities. And I think what I wanted to be clear with, and I think I talked with both you and Michelle about, is this isn't some third party coming in and telling the town what to do next and when. So
Right.
this is the information that would provide the foundation for our planning, both, you know, the relevant policy boards as well as our colleagues on the advisory committee.
Yes, exactly.
Further comments?
Yeah, I've got one question really for, I guess, Michelle and Tom. I note that this plan process is going to look at site assessments, specifically for South Shore Country Club. And how do you see that interacting with the CPC grant for South Shore Country Club and the swimming pool, where they're going to be looking at site assessments as well?
I think, well, the country club is the full site, so it wouldn't just be focused on the pool.
Sure.
But looking at, I know Kevin Whalen and the Country Club Management Committee have been looking at different activities that go on in the country club now and trying to figure out longer term what makes sense there. So I do think that there is still opportunities, maybe to figure out the highest and best use in the country club, as with all the properties on this list. I don't think it would be, you know, there's no point in time where all of our plans will be static, so whatever, if we move forward with this study, you know, in the summer, the consultant will have to take into consideration the projects that are in process already and build from there.
Good point, Bill.
Great, thank you.
Further comments? If not, I would take a motion.
Make a motion for favorable action of Article X.
Second?
All those in favor?
Do you just want to read off, just for the public, the buildings that are included in this?
Sure.
It's a pretty good list.
So current municipally owned facilities for inclusion in this analysis include 8 Short Street, which is the former Tree and Park Barn. It's currently leased to an independent third party. 308 Cushing Street, which is, as you all know, the former HMLP plant. Bear Cove Park Building X8.
Times 8 of, there's 8 of them.
Oh, time. So Bear Cove Park has all these little buildings that we use for storage.
It's a little,
We had
10,000 square feet each.
programs, so those could be, you
Yeah.
know, that could be a very useful exercise. There
right.
are some limitations on how we can use those, but
Yep.
that's kind of the point of this, is
Yeah, that's
what uses are going on and what might we plug in there. Bathing Beach Bathhouse, DPW facilities, fire station ×3, GAR Hall, Harbor Master leased office space at the Intermodal Center in the shipyard, the library, the Lynch Field House, the old DPW barn, the rec barn, schools ×6, school depot, South Shore Country Club, town hall, the water treatment plant. So, yeah, I think, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in different places around town, and I think we wanna make sure that we understand how all that's happening, where all it's happening, and the conditions of those buildings. So. Okay, so, we were going to hear amendments to the harbor bylaw, but we were concerned, frankly, that our colleagues on the Harbor Development Committee haven't voted on those bylaws yet. So, I see the harbor master in the audience. Maybe Ken, you could just come up and tell us a little bit about the bylaws as you're proposing them, but we're not gonna take any action on this tonight until Harbor Development has had a chance to,
Sure.
And they're scheduled to meet on this Thursday. to
That's
consider
correct.
this, yes.
Yeah, so the Harbor Development Committee will be meeting this Thursday. I'll also be at the Harbor Development Committee meeting to talk about proposed mooring regulation changes that I'm looking to see completed this springtime. So if anyone would like to come and hear what we're talking about, that would be great to see you there.
That meeting's at 7:30.
Yes, this Thursday. So there's 3 adjustments to Article 15, the harbor bylaw. One of them is that I'm looking to include scuba diving with skin diving. So if someone wants to go scuba diving in the harbor, they just have to let the harbor master's office know that they're going out scuba diving. Right now, it just lists skin diving, but I'd like to include scuba diving. We don't really have a lot of scuba diving taking place in town, but when we do, it's usually younger people. They tend to be in areas where there's a lot of boat traffic. They're required to have a flag, but I think it would be good to also have them let us know, so we're aware that they're out there and under the water.
There's scuba diving in the Hingham Coral Reefs, is that? what-
Yes, exactly. Most of the scuba diving that takes place in Hingham is commercial. It's usually at a marina, on a boat, doing a repair and stuff like that. And those people basically already notify us to let us know they're under there. The other change is, when it comes to fines, I'm looking to increase the ability to issue fines from $50 up to $300. Now, with that said, I just want to step back a little bit. If there's a violation of Article 15, the harbor bylaw, the fine will still be $50. The only change that I'm looking to actually have here is that if there's a violation in a dredging season where someone doesn't remove their boat from the inner harbor, then a fine could be issued up to $300. So not looking to change, so if someone gets a wake violation, not looking to make that $300, that would still stay at $50. But again, in a dredging season, there's a violation when it comes to emptying the boats out of the inner harbor. I'd like to be able to have that in there at $300. And I'll also be adding into the mooring regulations the process that we use to clear the harbor out in anticipation of dredging. And the reason I'm putting these in here is because in 10 years, whether I'm here or we're all here, I don't know, but I'd like to have guidance for the town as to the process to use as we prepare for dredging. It's worked out well the last 2 dredging cycles, so I think it's good to put into the regulations. So when it comes time for dredging, it's not a mystery for those that would be here conducting the dredging operation. And
you wanted to make a technical change?
oh, yes,
Right.
that's correct.
And so Ken and I talked a little bit about this technical change where there are certain regulations, harbor regulations that have to come through the Board of Selectmen, that the Board of Selectmen actually have approval authority over, and certain regulations that are under the auspices of the harbor master that would go right to the environmental police, which is a state agency, for their review and approval. And the way the bylaw is written now, you know, I think is a little murky in terms of the exact processes to follow one way or the other. It looks like the Board of Selectmen would approve everything, which is not the case. But I think Ken and maybe Joe as the liaison, we will work on some language that we might suggest to make clear that, I guess I felt strongly that no matter what, there should be a hearing before the Board of Selectmen, even if the Board of Selectmen is not going to approve those regulations, just because I think that, you know, this becomes a focal point for folks when we're making changes to how, you know, their behavior is regulated all over town, including the harbor. So where I would go with that language would be to make clear that in all cases, the Board of Selectmen would hear changes, but would obviously only approve them where that's warranted under state law or otherwise by town bylaw.
So I completely agree with you, and regardless of whether there's anything in there that requires your approval or not, especially for me, coming forward you in the spring with regulation changes, I anticipate to see not only my signature there on there, but also yours. So I didn't see it as a mechanism to not come to the Board of Selectmen. I think they always need to come to the Board of Selectmen. I think it's important to have your signature on there as approving anything that's necessary in them.
Right, okay.
So it's not a decision as to, okay, there's something here that they do or don't need to approve, it's just that they should come here and get reviewed and also be approved, should anything in there require your approval.
Yes,
Right.
so I think we'll clean up the language and make clear the public process so that people are aware and have an opportunity to participate. Yep.
That sounds
Yeah.
right to me. Okay. So we're not really hearing this, we're just hearing a report from him, so.
Could I ask one question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just on the dredging, Ken, I mean, if you're asking to increase that fine, I'm wondering if that's because of your recent experience this past fall?
So, not looking to increase, well, I guess to some degree. So we had no problems with people leaving the
Okay.
inner harbor. The last 2 dredging cycles, everyone has left on time, there have been no problems.
Okay,
But there was some question this last time around as to what we could actually have for a fine if someone didn't leave.
okay,
So that's why we're putting it into the regulations, so that when it comes time for dredging in 10 years, if someone doesn't leave, we have a fine that can actually be enforced.
thank you.
Okay, well, we will look forward to, we will, I think, work to try to get language to you in advance of the Thursday meeting, because I'd hate it to keep circling around, so I'd like you to at least have our thoughts. So I think this was actually very helpful tonight to get us all thinking about what our concerns are. The Harbor Development Committee can hear all of that, and then we'll come back here and approve that, if that's okay with you.
That's great.
Great, okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions for Ken? Thank you very much.
You're welcome, thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
So I'm wondering, do you want to do votes and then appointments? We don't have anything else, right? So we,
Maybe an appointment?
huh? We have-
An appointment?
Yeah, we have votes and appointments.
Yes, that's right.
Which would you prefer to do?
Uh,
So,
Why don't we go by the list?
yes, which starts with appointment. And we received a talent bank application from Lucinda King Frode. She likes to be called Cindy, looking to really assist the town in elder services. I've spoken with her. She has a very impressive resume. She's a retired professor of social work at Bridgewater State University. She's involved in other civic, charitable, and educational activities in town. I think she would bring real value to the Council on Aging, and I would urge her participation, and will commend and prepare a motion to move her on unless there's other comments.
No, that was a terrific resume.
Very well suited to the Council on Aging.
So I move to appoint Lucinda King Frode to the Council on Aging to fill an unexpired term ending June 30, 2020.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
And I think I would just mention that we still have one additional
We
opening
do.
on the Council on Aging, and it is a wonderful organization, and if anyone is interested, we would invite you to fill out a talent bank application.
Okay, we got a couple of liquor licenses, but we also have a technical vote to take tonight to sign the warrant for the 2020 state primary. So I would accept a motion to sign the warrant for the 2020 state primary.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and we have a couple of one-day liquor licenses. I've reviewed the packages. The chief, I've confirmed that the chief is on board with both of these one-day licenses. He had no concerns.
I will move to approve the issuance of a special one-day wine and malt beverages license to Alexandra Joy on behalf of Rev'd Indoor Cycling for the Rev'd Unclipped Self-Care Social to be held at the Derby Street Shops on Friday, February 28, 2020, from 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll make a motion to approve the issuance of a special one-day wine and malt beverages license to John Davenport on behalf of Friends of Hingham Cemetery for the Ames Chapel Author Reading and Talk event to be held at Ames Chapel on Thursday, April 30th, 2020, from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, I think it is report time. Michelle?
I have a short one for you tonight.
Oh, no way.
I had the pleasure this last weekend of ringing one of the bells in Memorial Bell Tower, and it was really cool.
That is very cool.
And getting to learn about the 11 bells from Daniel Cushing, Martha Ryan, and their other bell ringing colleagues. So it was really cool, and I highly recommend a visit if anyone hasn't been.
That's fantastic.
As you can imagine, there was one former selectman that was thrilled.
Yeah.
It's really an art, and it was fun. I sent him a video.
Did you blind any clocks while you're down there?
I did not, but
That's fantastic. Tom?
Not tonight.
Joe?
So I may wind up deferring to Mary on this to report on the Lincoln Day celebration at Old Ship. I will say that I had the honor of reading the town's proclamation. It was very well received, and walking through the cemetery, seeing where the various grave sites are located, it was really a moving experience, and the participation of people both in Hingham and from outside of Hingham who come to Hingham just for this event. It was just very moving. So that would be it.
Yeah, and I would just add, just thanks to the Heritage Museum and to Deirdre Anderson, the executive director. Every year, this is a wonderful gathering. Paula Bagger's remarks were thoughtful, wonderful. She talked about Benjamin Lincoln, more as sort of the man and the person, which, was really interesting. And then I think the highlight for many of us was when Rosie Woodard, who is a descendant of Benjamin Lincoln, and she and her husband Charlie live in the Benjamin Lincoln house, she read a letter that she had transcribed that Benjamin Lincoln had sent to his wife and children after he was wounded. And it's been published online. I'm kind of hoping the Hingham Journal might run it. It is just a wonderful letter. It talks to his children about taking care of their mother and their sister who was disabled, and it was, I think everybody found it very inspirational, and the fact that it was read by a descendant was just really special. And I would just add that the prior Saturday was National History Day at the Heritage Museum. And that is just a great day that's done in conjunction with the Heritage Museum and with the AP US History class at Hingham High School. It showcases the wonderful history program at the high school and some very talented students, and just a really great day. And again, I think when our CPC money, when we talked about the Heritage Museum and we talked about the possibility, I think my experience has been that the Heritage Museum is so much a part of the fabric of Hingham, and I think the programs, the events that it offers are just a celebration of our heritage in great ways, and it's just become a really vital, an even more vital part of our community than it previously was.
Great, thank you. I have two things. Oh, thanks. Two things tonight. One is, I feel like I'm a little late to the party, but I wanted to congratulate our young citizen, Owen Colley. He is the 6-year-old who's been raising money for the Australian Wildlife Fund. In the wake of the fires in Australia, Owen has been creating these small clay koalas that folks really all over the country have been reaching out and purchasing. And he's somewhat of a star. I think he's been to the State House, he's been on the parquet at the Boston Garden, and like I said, I think I feel a little tardy in recognizing his generosity of spirit and his entrepreneurship in really benefiting a cause bigger than himself. And it's certainly something that's, I think, we're on all of our minds as we, I think, pray for a safe resolution to the fires in Australia. So thank you, Owen. And on a different note, I wanted to give a shout out to our colleagues at the South Shore Country Club, because they received some great news today that the club has been selected as the host for the 2020 Massachusetts Women's Amateur Championship. You know, I think it's a real testament to the commitment of the staff from top to bottom that they're selected to host this really premier amateur event here at the Hingham Country Club. So Kate Cannon, Mark License, Mike McMullen, Mike Libby, Jake Silva, Kevin Whalen, and Chris Riley. Congratulations. We've talked about the Country Club a couple times here as being a community asset that we're all proud of, and it's just recognized really as a premier golf course. And I congratulate you for being a club that that Massachusetts Golf would look to host this sort of event. So well done, one and all. I don't think I have anything.
I would
further.
just correct, it is the Women's Senior Amateur Championship.
Okay. Thanks for that, Jeff. It's really, kind of took the air out. I still congratulate you. Okay, any other further comments? Okay, everybody. Well, thanks for being with us briefly this evening. We will be back. I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Good night, everybody.
Very efficient.